Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton,
I'm Bob Scarborough.
and we are the FAIRtax Guys. Oh,
Yeah,
and I apologize if I sound funny. My nose is stopped up beyond description, just about. This
I understand.
surgery I had, this surgery I had, I say a few weeks ago. This is actually going to stream in the middle of December, and we're recording this in the first part of November. So we're way ahead on this thing. This is part of getting so many shows in the can that I can go to Hawaii and still not miss anything.
That's
But
right.
hopefully by the time this streams, I can actually breathe like a normal human being. But again, sorry if I sound funny, but I am really congested as an after effect of the surgery I had. Whatever. That's neither here nor there. We are set to go here on FAIRtax Power. How are you doing? Hopefully better than I am.
Who, me? I'm doing great, man. Always great. I'm now, I'm just praying that your situation works itself out before you go to Hawaii.
Yeah,
And
of course. By the time this streams, that trip will have been taken and over. So
correct.
hopefully we're good here. This is the last one that we're recording way ahead. Next week's FAIRtax Power Radio show will be recorded just a few days before it runs, so it'll be a lot more timely and a lot more contemporary stuff that we're talking about. But we're getting there. But as we always do, I am
Yes.
going to head over to Congress.gov. And again, as we are recording this, we are still in the midst of that government shutdown. Hopefully, has been resolved by a good bit by the time this actually runs. But there has not been as much going on there as that particular issue has just taken over the entire town up there, and there wasn't much going on. But there are still, believe it or not, there are still proposals being made to change the tax code even in the midst of this thing. So
Yeah.
let's dig in if we can. And this one really caught my attention. This is S3088 from Senator John Curtis of Utah. The Fusion Advanced Manufacturing Parity Act. You care to hazard a guess as to what that's all about?
The Fusion Advanced Manufacturing Parity Act,
The
is that what you just said?
It says it's the Fusion Advanced Manufacturing Parity Act. And of course, you have to dig into the text to see what in the world does that have to do with the tax code. And you see that this is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to expand the Advanced Manufacturing Production Credit to include fusion energy components. Now, to the best of my knowledge, there is not a lick of electricity being generated anywhere, not in this country, anywhere in the world that I know of, by nuclear fusion. I'm sure that they're trying to figure that out to make that work, on a workable basis. But this bill wants to expand the advanced manufacturing production credit to include fusion energy components. And you stick on down here. Fusion energy components is a high temperature superconducting magnet, a fusion chamber or plasma vacuum vessel, a blanket system, a high temperature superconductor tape or wire, a high energy laser, fusion heating system, and on and on and on. That's about a third of the list of stuff that qualifies as fusion energy components. Did you ever think you would see something like that in the tax code?
No, and they're probably getting ready to pair that with another bill that is in the tax code that has the phrase "and for other purposes" in it, because I can't see how it's going to work by itself, considering there are no there's no fusion, no confusion on the fusion. You know what I mean?
Oh, well, I tell you, nuclear fusion, most of the nuclear plants that are in effect now use nuclear fission, meaning they are splitting atoms. Nuclear fusion is actually the reaction that goes on in the sun, where hydrogen atoms are smashed together with such force that they fuse together to form helium. And that releases a tremendous amount of energy, as you can tell. The sun's been doing its thing for quite a while now, and it's still going. So I guess they're still trying to figure out how to harness nuclear fusion to make energy in this country, and they want to extend the manufacturing credit to include the stuff you need to do that. Oh,
Well,
crazy.
that's wonderful.
Well, this is kind of somewhat related. This is H.R. 5862 from Mike Thompson of California. This is the American Energy Independence and Affordability Act. If we could ever harness nuclear fusion, I guess we would have energy independence, because they said that is almost an unlimited source of power if you can get it to work. But this one, H.R. 5862, is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to restore certain energy-related provisions as in effect prior to the enactment of Public Law 119-21, which I am not mistaken, I think that's the big, beautiful bill. I'm not 100% sure. But they want to, that public law changed some energy-related provisions, and this bill wants to restore what that bill changed. So again, doesn't really matter what's there. That is another shining example of the incredible instability in the tax code. You'll get something will change it, then you'll get another bill to change it back, then you get another bill to change it in another direction. It is just constantly shifting sand that defines how our tax code is and how it works. And that is one of the primary reasons that we need to get rid of it and replace it all with a fair tax.
Without a doubt. And that's, I think, where a lot of people are having trouble grasping the benefit other than what we know to be the benefit, but that all of the things that we talk about within Congress.gov, within what is happening with the tax code in legislation, it's not the way to get business taken care of. It is for some people, but not the general public doesn't necessarily benefit. Special interests do for sure.
Indeed. All right, let's move on here. H.R. 5840 is the next item up for bids here on FAIRtax Power Radio. This is the Feed the Community Act. You look at that and say, what? Feed the Community Act? What does that have to do with the tax code? And you dig in here, and you will find, as soon as my computer decides to work, oh no, now it's going really slow. Come on. One more time here. This is the Feed the Community Act. Representative Nanette Berrigan, I think that's how you pronounce that. That's from California. Mm-hmm. And there it goes. Now it finally came up. And it says, this is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow charitable donations of food transportation vehicles and food storage equipment to receive the same tax treatment as charitable donations of food inventory in the case of donations to nonprofit organizations which provide food to communities in need.
Well,
you cannot make this stuff up. That's what they're trying to put in the tax code.
I love it.
If I'm reading this right, it's trying to say, all right, if you donate a food transportation vehicle, i.e. a truck or a van or something, or if you donate food storage equipment, refrigerators, freezers, and the like, that they get the same tax treatment as if you're actually donating food inventory. I guess it's crazy that the tax code doesn't make those things the same to begin with, and it takes this bill to do it.
Well, there's so many out there, it's hard to know if you're not crossing from one to the next, duplicating effort, but based on a specific need from a specific constituent or a specific group of people or something that a lobbyist might be involved in. How do you know that there's not parallel activity taking place in another part of the legislature there?
Oh, I don't know. We got to move on here before we use up all our time doing this. This is H.R. 5809, the Fight Hunger Act, which is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow a credit against tax for food donations. So now not just a deduction, this bill wants to give you a tax credit if you make food donations. And that's all it says, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow a credit against tax for food donations. Shall we just let that one leave there for a while?
Yeah, I'm going to let it simmer. I'll probably come back to you on that a little later on in the program.
Okay, last one, H.R. 5776. This is the Egg Save Act. of 2025. Do we see a common theme here running through today's FAIRtax Power Radio Congress.gov? This is Representative Nicole Malliotakis, New York. We've seen her name quite a bit on some of these things we've been looking at. And this is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide a tax credit for, and I'm not sure what this is, layer operation efficiency equipment. Layer, I'm guessing in this case, refers to a hen that's laying eggs, because this is the egg save, is part of the title of this bill, the Egg Save Act. So you want to provide a tax credit for layer operation efficiency equipment. So if you can buy equipment that helps your chickens lay eggs more efficiently, then you can get a. You cannot make this stuff up, folks. That is what is being put into the tax code.
That's just nutty.
That's just nutty. And that is why we come on here week after week after week after week telling folks we need to get rid of this mess and replace it all with the fair tax. And so, yes. Wow. All right, we've taken up an inordinate amount of time with it this week, but I tell you what, that's just craziness that we have to highlight every week and convince people that we need to get rid of the income tax. But I was thinking, if there are other reasons that we can convince people to get rid of the income tax, and I was just thinking, if there was a way that I could just, crack open the nation's, collective intelligence and consciousness and pour in information and pour in understanding that people just currently don't seem to have at the moment, what would I do? And I think there's one way to do that. One thing I really wish the American people knew more about and was more aware of is just how much the income tax system is costing them. I mean, people look at their 1044, but they look at the line down there that says, all right, you owe this much tax. Of course, a lot of people, they get a refund and say, I didn't pay any tax. And so that's not true. But anyway.
They go out and buy a big TV.
Yeah, the tax owed, that figure on your income tax 1040 form is far, far, far from what the tax system is actually costing you. And this is really a two-pronged thing. Let's see, there it is. If I stick them over there, my finger disappeared into thin air. But you got to be watching on one of the video screens. I'm working against a virtual background, and sometimes parts of me disappear against it, whatever. But anyhow, there's a two-pronged approach to that, and there are one thing, of course, that I wish the concept that I could get people to understand would be the concept of embedded taxes. People do not understand that a portion of every dollar you spend for everything you buy ends up at the IRS as the seller's income tax, which means, the price of everything you buy. I mean, literally everything, products, services, everything you buy has a tax component embedded in the price. You don't see it. It's not on your receipt, but that is a cost that the income tax system is imposing on you indirectly, actually, because they're directly imposing the tax on the person that is selling you whatever you're buying. But then the person who is selling you whatever you're buying has to include the cost of his tax liability in the price that he charges. I mean, people understand that when you buy something, the price covers the cost of the labor and materials that it took to produce that product. But they just don't seem to get it, to understand that taxes are a cost of doing business. The tax costs that are imposed on sellers and producers and distributors and stuff is included in the price you pay for something. And studies have said there's about 20% of the price of everything you pay is all this tax liability that is being passed forward to you. And every dime of that goes away with the fair tax. So the fair tax will dramatically reduce prices, at least at the wholesale level, to the point that when the fair tax is added back in, there is very little difference between what the consumer pays today, paying all those embedded costs, and paying the fair tax, what they would see. And so that's point one. And point two is that people just do not understand how much the income tax system is costing them in compliance costs. How much money do you have to spend? How much time do you have to spend simply complying with the tax code? This is money that comes out of your pocket over and above the tax liability that is shown on your 1040 form. It is tremendous. And again, if people could understand just how much the income tax system is costing them, we as a nation would be much, much more receptive to replacing this monstrosity with the fair tax. So that's what we're going. So I got out my copy of the FAIRtax book. My little part of it disappeared against my background again. There it is. This is the original 2005 Boortz and Linder FAIRtax book, the first one, the white one.
Yes.
Chapter 4 in that book again goes into our current tax code, the cost of compliance. So if I can read just a bit about what Boortz and Linder wrote here, you might think that the bottom line on your individual or business tax return, the one that shows you the total taxes you owe, pretty much tells the entire story of how much our tax system costs you every year. Well, you would be wrong. Very, very wrong. The cost of our current system of taxation goes far beyond the actual taxes remitted to the U.S. Treasury. And one of the beauties of the fair taxes we'll see is how little individuals and business have to pay just to comply with the law. Wow. Okay, your turn.
Okay, think for a moment of the trouble you go through every year, all of us do, trying to get your annual tax return ready. In 2000, estimated time the average American spent on the process was up to 27 hours. That's more than a full day for the average taxpayer just to fill out their tax forms. Now, don't you just love those hours you spend every year sitting cross-legged on the living room floor with bank statements and receipts and check stubs and various other documents scattered around the room? Then again,
yes.
One of the ever-growing number of Americans who just pass this responsibility off to an accountant or another tax repairer probably be better too, in which case we'll just restate the question. Don't you just love the money you spend every year paying someone to help you pay the government?
That's crazy.
It's
It absolutely is. A little bit farther on, so let me ask you another question here. What if your local bank sent you a notice telling you that it was going to start charging you $33 for every $100 that you deposit? All of that just to cover the bank's cost of complying with banking regulations. Now, would you keep making your deposits there if the bank literally took 33% of your deposit for themselves?
Wouldn't do it.
No, you'd be better off keeping your money under your mattress. And again, we're reading from the FAIRtax book here, the original Boortz and Linder FAIRtax book. You'd rather keep your money under your mattress than give up a third of it to the bank like that. So why then are we still all so willing to tolerate a tax system in which the government takes the first 33 cents out of every dollar we earn? Why do we put up with it? We would not put up with it if the bank were doing that to your deposit, but we're letting the government do that to your paycheck, and people just accept it as fine. That's just the way it is.
Well, one thing that the FAIRtax does, and I'm diverting from the book just a minute to remind folks that the FAIRtax makes the taxes transparent in the transaction. All of a sudden, you are going to see how much tax you're paying when you go to the cash register. You'll buy whatever it is you're going to buy, and on the same receipt, you're going to see FAIRtax, and there's the amount right there. And it more than likely will even out, but you'll have an opportunity to see exactly what impact the taxes are on your purchase. We know that competition is going to help control the costs, and in some cases will reduce costs, and especially when it comes to those items that are used, or in the case of education, where there is no tax levied from the FAIRtax, not unlike what you get taken into consideration now.
Indeed. Now, a little farther over, and again, remind everybody, this book came out in 2005. I mean, It's 20 years old. So some of the numbers they're using are somewhat outdated, even though they still illustrate the concept. And continuing here, it says, for several years, the Tax Foundation has calculated the cost of complying with the increasingly complicated federal tax code. They estimate in 2002, which is apparently the latest year they had when this book was written, that individuals, businesses, and nonprofits spent 5.8 billion with a B hours complying with the tax code, an effort that cost an estimated $194 billion. Now think of that for a second. 5.8 billion hours. If the average life expectancy here in this country is 76 years, then 5.8 billion hours annually it takes you to do the country to do their taxes. It would equal the combined lifespan of 8,700 Americans. It's as if we're throwing away those 8,700 lives every year just to make sure that everybody is complied with the tax code. What an incredible waste of human potential and productivity. Mercy. Insane.
Well, here's another way to look at it, continuing in the book. What kind of workforce would it take to cover those 5.8 billion hours? If you figure a standard work week, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, a few weeks off every year for vacation, it adds up to a workforce of more than 2.77 million people. That's more people than work in the auto industry, the computer manufacturing industry, the aircraft manufacturing industry, talk radio, and the steel industry in the United States combined. This is, by any measure, a huge and tragic waste of our human resources, and all of that to simply comply with the tax code. And the thing is, it's time lost and non-productive. The time is non-productive for anything of great benefit other than to make sure that the government gets what they consider to be their money.
Yeah, and again, people just do not consider that a cost that the income tax system is imposing on them. But it is. It absolutely is. Now, skip to the next page. The cost of complying with the tax system takes several forms. Tax Foundation has categorized 3 separate types of tax compliance costs. The first one, wealthy individuals that will spend tens of billions of dollars a year in tax planning. Estate planning among these wealthy individuals would be many people you might know, your neighbor, for example, who might not live a life of wealth and glamour, but who have holdings they'd like to protect from taxation. And it's not unusual for a farmer, for example, to spend tens of thousands of dollars each year with tax planners so that his heirs will be able to keep the family farm, keep the property safe from the death tax, and continue to farm after he dies. That's one. 2, both individuals and businesses spend countless dollars each year on tax seminars, educational forums, tax record keeping, and the preparation and filing of tax forms and returns. And number 3 is tax audits and litigation over tax returns are a deadly drain on the economy as a whole. If the IRS comes at you, you have to defend yourself. That does not come cheap. That is a cost of the income tax system. And again, you add all this up and it becomes much, much, much more than is on the line in your 1040 form that tells you how much tax you're actually sending to the Treasury.
Now, for those of you thinking that if you have the FAIRtax, that whole operation that we just talked about goes away to a degree, but for the most part, you're not going to spend unproductive time dealing in your business or in your own life with reporting to the federal government anything about your finances or your business. And basically, going back to the book, those 3 types of tax compliant costs, only the second is included in the Tax Foundation's $194 billion tax compliance cost estimate.
Oh, mercy. All right. One more thing we want to hit on before we run out of time here. We got about 4.5 minutes left, is something called opportunity costs. That is money you lose or because you just simply didn't have the opportunity to use it. You think about it, what if you were able, instead of having a big chunk of your paycheck withheld every, pay period and whatever. What if you were actually allowed to keep that money until the tax was actually due? We're not changing the amount of tax that you owe, but instead of withholding that from you, you have now got dollars in your hand that you didn't have before. And if you were able to invest those dollars and draw some interest, get some investment return on that before you actually had to turn them over to the IRS. The money that you could have made in that fashion is gone because the government takes it from you before you get it. That is an opportunity cost, and those are huge as well.
Absolutely. Businesses and high-income individuals routinely calculate the tax implications of a business decision. I look at it like this. Time is money. So
Yes.
you have to consider the amount of opportunity cost related to the time that you can't spend increasing your knowledge about how to serve your market, your people that you're either your business to business or business to consumer. The opportunity costs there are great. Or somebody may walk in and say, "Hey, Bob, I'd really like to have you involved in this particular opportunity." And you say, "Well, I really can't right now because my time is the time that I would need to spend with you to build that. I have to spend on something else, possibly to do with tax compliance, possibly something else." But the opportunity that you lose or the potential for losing that is great when you have to deal with paying the federal government, keeping up with all of the various routines that you have to go through to present to the government the activity that you're working on vis-a-vis your business operation, and how you are working to pay whatever your obligation is going to be in the future.
Yep. Final little gem of wisdom from the original Boortz and Linder FAIRtax book. It said in 2002, if taxpayers had been allowed to keep their money until it was due, no withholding, they keep it until it's due, and if they had invested that money in completely safe and secure T-bills, tax-paying Americans will have pocketed nearly $24 billion in interest payments. And all that was lost because the government took that money from you and you didn't have it in your hand to invest it. That is just a huge opportunity cost. And so we need to get rid of the whole stinking system and replace it with a fair tax.
Yeah, and the thing about politicians is they don't like to deal with this because we understand that their benefit is to keep the tax code there, but so they go through and they call tax reform or tax simplification. Every time you open the door to your congressman's office, he's talking about how do we make it simple or more simple so we're not causing too much strain on the taxpayer. And what they really need to do, and we know this, but we know it's not going to happen right away, is ditch the income tax, go with the consumption tax known as the FAIRtax HR 25, and that truly is a simple, fair, and transparent way to make the taxes that we pay to run our federal government certainly more easy to digest.
Absolutely. Okay, so to wrap this up, understand, if you don't remember anything else we tell you tonight, understand this basic truth. The income tax system is costing you a lot more than you are even aware of. So we need to get rid of it, and the FAIRtax does not impose any of those kind of hidden tax costs that are routinely passed on to consumers today. So it is costing you a lot more than you really realize. And I'm positive if American voters, as a bloc, as a group, understood that and understood just how much more the income tax system is costing them than what they're actually sending up to the Treasury, but they would have ditched this system a long time ago. So we need to do that. But we're out of time here on FAIRtax Power Radio. Thank you so much for watching, tuning in, sharing the videos on your social media. We certainly appreciate that. So until we meet again, same time, same channel next week here on FAIRtax Power Radio, I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So what do you need from me to get these taxes collected?
Glad you asked, because there is a fair amount of information you need to be aware of.
That's your tax plan?
Oh, no, this is just the revisions for this year's tax plan. What I need from you is you need to keep track of all of your income, as well as any taxes that you've already paid. Also, any gifts that you received or gifts you've given to churches or charities or individuals throughout the entire year. Do you do any side jobs?
Every now and again.
Great, because there's some more information about that right here. Everything you need to know right here. So just simply compile that, send it in to us. Be careful, make sure there's no mistakes. If we do find mistakes were made, we can fine you or, throw you in jail. So you might want to be aware of that.
And what do you need from me?
As an individual, nothing. As a business owner, or if you're doing side jobs, yes, you would have to collect taxes on that, but, well, it's all right here.
Can I get a copy of that?